I, Eric J. Holcomb.
I, Eric J. Holcomb.
Indiana's 51st governor, leaving office after 8 years, leading the state through the pandemic and pushing it on a path to prosperity through record investment and economic growth. Eric Holcomb reflects on the past, present, and future of Indiana on this special edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm pleased to be joined on what I guess you could technically call a Business and Beyond video cast or vidcast instead of a podcast by two-term Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb as he prepares to leave office. Well, Governor, as you prepare to leave office after 2 terms, how is Indiana today different than what it was when you took office?
Yeah, I've started to be very reflective about this and sentimental at times, and to think that we have a New Albany and a New Castle and a New Haven and a New Carlisle. It's really a new Indiana when you stop and think for a second about all the new ecosystems that are scattered and spread across the entire state. We've always been obviously a powerhouse when it comes to ag and ag biotech and life sciences and advanced manufacturing. Now we're increasingly finding ourselves planning for what we want to be in 2030 and 2040. And those long-term investments, those strategic investments, really have made a difference in terms of not just the growth, but the new opportunity that will be here, not somewhere else, still an uber competitive world out there. Companies have to make decisions on where they're going to grow their roots and then blossom. But increasingly so, we see investments in the billions being made, and those are forever long-term decisions that have to be made. So we have to be very mindful of investing in quality of place and quality of life, investing and reinvesting in ourselves so that we have a quality workforce that can meet the needs of the company that's competing around the world as well.
I want to ask you about some of those new economy companies and industries in a moment, but you took a very active role in economic development, to be sure. And the numbers were very big. Last year, a record year for economic development in Indiana. You blew through that in 3 quarters this year, so another record year this year. I know there are a number of factors at play, but can you put your finger on one thing that is really driving economic development wins?
I think Indiana has really hit our groove in terms of alignment of mission and purpose, in terms of aligning state and local government with the corporate sector, with the philanthropic sector, and most maybe importantly with academia. Having Purdue, IU, Notre Dame, Butler, Ball State, ISU, Ivy Tech, Vincennes University at the table in the beginning of our discussions with companies all over the world, they understand that we're serious about not just getting folks hired for the initial phase, but a lot of these companies are making investments, again, big investments that will require phase 2, phase 3, up to phase 6. And that means that they have to not just, if you're Stellantis, plan for retirements out the next decade, but also plan for the new types of jobs in the next decade. And so that requires Purdue, IU, Notre Dame, Ivy Tech being at the table right now and having a plan in place to implement, not just understanding the latest buzzword and repeating it, but actually putting a plan on the table and making commitments, shared commitments. And I think that alignment and the strategic approach on both sides of the table, the company and the state, has yielded some unprecedented results. How
significant, in your view, is the separation of Indiana and Purdue universities here in Indianapolis?
It's a significant separation in terms of they each have their sole mission and are going to be able to really take it to not just the next level, but the next and the next and the next. We all need more engineers. And Purdue is going to be able to step that up to the tune of X thousands of new engineers here in this urban campus. And having that applied knowledge that close to the industry in our capital city, and for Indiana University as well, in terms of life sciences and how pronounced that sector is in our economy as well, to be able to determine what the future will look like, to have an Indiana University and an Indiana IU Health right next door to each other, really means we have our act together.
Yeah, you mentioned Ivy Tech a moment ago. I know it had a big role in the Samsung SDI joint ventures in Kokomo and the South Bend area. As you look at workforce, such a huge issue all over the country, obviously, but here in Indiana, how comfortable do you feel about where workforce is now? And is that kind of unfinished business?
Absolutely unfinished business, and always will be. I'll always be uncomfortable about potentially outkicking our coverage, meaning we can attract world-class companies here, but we have to have the workforce needed, and that requires us to be nimble and agile as a state in how we upskill and reskill the workforce that they need, especially considering demographics. Demographics and statistics are pretty stubborn, and they tell the story. And as we age, we need to make sure we're not only retaining talent, but attracting more talent and then retraining lifelong.
Some of the biggest names in business investing billions of dollars in the state of Indiana: Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, investing lots of money, pledging to lots of jobs. Is there more in the pipeline? I mean, people are amazed at the level of investment by these companies. Is this the beginning?
This is the beginning, truly, and it's a new frontier, and we are, as we have, not just exploring this new space, but we're discovering and making those discoveries alongside the companies. And that's what's so attractive, is they see that we are investing in their pursuits, in our shared pursuits. And so for a state like Indiana that has had an Eli Lilly have their corporate headquarters and their corporate flag planted here, and to be a global company, but reinvesting up to now $13 billion in one new area of our state, shows to all the other companies, the companies that are manufacturing isotopes throughout the state of Indiana, shows that we have what it takes for them to not just start up, but to grow. We've had record years of new startups and new small business startups in the last 8 years as well. And so it's not just a large billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar kind of headlines that companies see. They see this vibrant small business ecosystem, entrepreneurial pursuits that are making these discoveries, finding out ways to make plastic toothpaste caps 100% biodegradable. Those are, from recycling watermelon rinds. Those are very attractive to a company like Berry Global down in Evansville, Indiana. And so again, this is statewide, and these innovations that are coming off the family factory floor or the family farm out in the fields, this is what's exciting, is how we're bringing people together and then maximizing all of our efforts because we're synchronized.
You mentioned Lilly and that $13.2 billion investment. How special, in your view, is that investment, not just for the big numbers and the numbers of jobs, but the fact that Eli Lilly and Company, founded, headquartered here, is reinvesting here and perhaps not elsewhere?
Well, people wherever I go around the world or the country or the state know the Lilly name and what it means to their well-being, quite frankly. People want to associate with a world-class company and state like Indiana and Lilly. And so I can be sitting in King Faisal Hospital, a hospital in Riyadh, and one of the first things out of the hospital administrator's mouth is, yeah, we do business with Eli Lilly, just to let me know. And we're bigger than, the Indy 500 and Larry Bird. Now Eli Lilly is just as big in the corporate sector. And so for them to be able to grow, it means the world to our reputation and stature in terms of how we grow alongside a corporate's intentions.
Lilly investing in the LEAP Innovation District in Lebanon and Boone County. Very aggressive move and part of a strategy at IEDC. Not everyone is a big fan of that in terms of feeling the state shouldn't be in the business of acquiring land and going after business. How do you react to that? Because if you look at the LEAP District, there have been some big successes already there.
Big successes already, more to come. I understand change. I understand not just change in the landscape, but change in the type of business that's being conducted there. And I would say that the state of Indiana has to operate at the speed of business. And we were competing against other states and losing looks and deals because, yes, we had low cost, yes, we had high talent, but we didn't necessarily have great sites. And now we're at a place to where we have a repository or an inventory at the IEDC of if you need 5 acres or 50 acres or 500 or 1,500, we've got the inventory and here it is. Let's sit down and work together on what makes sense for you. LEAP was in reaction to being left out of deals that would have gone somewhere else. Now we're in the situation where other states are saying, we got to catch up with Indiana. Indiana's getting more than their fair share. And so we're looking at other states that are figuring this out too. And that just shows you how on your toes you have to be and quickly you have to pivot to what strategy is going to work. And you can't dither.
Your successor, Mike Braun, has talked about maybe a retooling or restructuring of IEDC. Is any reaction to that?
I think every governor or leader in an executive position has to build an organization or a structure that is in line with their experience and their instincts and their personality, their style. And so I'm very, very proud of 3 years ago having new capital committed investment of 8.7, which was an all-time record. You mentioned last year 28.7. This year we're knocking on 40 billion. So my caution would be don't fix what's not broken. But we do need to always try to improve. And I'll practice what I preach and say every single year we were making observations and then acting on them. So if as he restructures, I would look at that trajectory and say, here's where we were, and now it's a hockey stick going straight up. How are we? If I was going to be here another 4 years, I'd be thinking, how am I going to keep that shooting straight up? Because that new committed capital investment ultimately ends up into the category of new opportunity and careers, like over $100,000 a year type. We're always over the average county wage, the average state wage, and the average national wage. And so how do you continue to keep that momentum going? And it will require change.
We talked about new economy companies and industries coming into Indiana. Continue to be a manufacturing intensive state, no doubt about that. But when you look at microelectronics and new energy, electric vehicles, you can go on down the list. A lot of new economy companies putting down roots here. Is there one of those industries that you think Indiana is especially well suited to take advantage of?
I think because of our heritage and because we've always tried to not just keep up with the times, but set the pace in terms of our the future of mobility, our auto industry, what it's going to look like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Obviously, our investments into Department of Defense related companies, we have a really strong hand to play there. And those two will serve us well. But we're making, obviously, jet engines and fuselages and transmissions, and the way that those are done are generating energy, the hydrogen hub, the microelectronics hub, the biotech hub, to have not just good corporate money chase a safe bet, but to have the federal government as well aligned. That's really special when you have local, state, and federal governments coming together and saying, this is where we want to end up 20 years from now. That's where vision becomes realized.
Is there a hurdle out there or something that can be preventative to making these things? What's set up right now would seem to be a lot of momentum and a lot of potential for future investment. Is there something out there that could stop that? Something that Indiana needs to address?
I think the health of our workforce and the skill sets of our workforce need to continue to improve. And that's across the board. And I need to get healthier myself, so I'm not pointing a finger at anybody that I wouldn't point it right back at. But making sure that when you look at the menu of jobs and careers that a company needs filled, to be able to deliver on that and say, and we can do a lot more to be able to keep up with the growth that is necessary for a company to not just stay in business, but to be able to stay in the lead around the world. And I cheer for our companies that are reshoring or onshoring, coming back here. Last year of that $28.7 billion capital committed investment, 20 billion, over 70% of it was foreign direct investment, meaning that's coming back to Indiana. That's what we want, and to continue to build out those supply chains. But we have to make sure we have the workforce capable of continuing that growth.
Foreign direct investment has been a big focus of your administration, too. I think 27 Indiana Economic Development trade missions. You went on more beyond that as well. Yeah. How important were those? What has been the kind of the net gain, in your view, of making that effort?
Well, we have to more than farm. We have to be hunters as well. We have to cultivate the fields and the factory floors here in the state of Indiana and continue to be a powerhouse in advanced manufacturing. But we also have to go out and hunt and bring back bounty. And by the way, the companies of the future that are discovering and innovating and inventing, they're looking for partners that are doing both. They're looking for partners that are taking care of their own, investing in their own people and places, but also folks who are globally minded, that understand that supply chains can be disrupted in a number of ways, geopolitical events included. But if you can provide certainty and continuity and stability, predictability here at home, that's what companies want.
Much more ahead with Indiana Governor Gerry Holcomb, including his passion for collecting baseball cards and presidential signatures. That's when the Business and Beyond podcast, vodcast, returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast, or this week a vidcast presented by PNC. I'm Gerry Dick. We've talked about successes. How about challenges and challenging times? Certainly you led the state during the pandemic, which was a unique challenge to be sure. As you reflect back on these last 8 years, a particular time that was really difficult?
I think clearly the pandemic was a time that tested men's and women's souls and outlook, just because you never knew when it was going to end. And the information was changing on a very regular basis, maybe daily basis. And you had to make data-driven decisions, often which two different people would disagree about what the data meant or how to interpret the data and how to predict, and balancing lives and livelihoods. I think the kind of calm, steady Eddie approach, the constant communication, the sharing, the transparency certainly helped us get through a time like hadn't been seen since 1918. And clearly the rebound that Indiana has seen since means that we were always on solid footing and had a foundation of which to launch right after that chapter was turned. Any
regrets, either during the pandemic, decisions made, or other things that you would say, well, maybe
They're tough ones, and I don't mean to sound like Frank Sinatra here, and regrets, I've had a few, but I don't necessarily have regrets, because whether it was hard or not, we gave it our best shot. Would I have liked, so I'm a bit disappointed that we haven't made more progress in terms of infant and maternal mortality rates. I'm a bit disappointed I wasn't persuasive enough to get pregnancy accommodations passed through the legislature in the corporate sector, in the private sector. We did it in the state, in our administration, state government. but I thought that was pro-business. I thought that was pro-good culture. So there are a number of items that you always remember those. Those are always front and center. I hold on to those probably closer than I do the wins, just because we couldn't get it done. But it doesn't mean that we didn't have really good people working on those issues. And but in total and on whole, really proud of the team and what we were able to achieve and the unprecedented results that came from it.
And in terms of those wins, sometimes I think it's unfair to say what was that big win or that one item. Was there one thing, especially as you look at the business side of things, that you're going to really remember?
I think I'll certainly remember those big headlines and the small headlines, the smaller deals. About 80% of our deals at the IADC are small, medium-sized business deals. They don't get the coverage, but some of them are really special. Some of them are going into Union County, and it's the biggest investment that's been made in Liberty, Indiana in 20 years. But it's a $7 million investment. That's a big investment there, relatively speaking. It's going to hire more people. I think also just finishing or starting major capital projects, assets, finishing I-69, which took 3 governors. Starting and finishing double tracking the South Shore Line, Westlake Corridor, making significant progress on 31, making sure that that corridor from Fort Wayne to Valparaiso into the 3rd biggest economy, Chicago, in the country is well on its way, heading in the right direction. Broadband internet, connecting rural places, expanding the field of commerce throughout all 92 counties. The trail program, we became a national leader in terms of hiking, biking, riding trails. So all those infrastructure projects and being able to, I was just yesterday up in Westville, there are very few, if any, states that can put down $1.2 billion and build a new correctional facility that combines 2 old ones, one of which was started in 1860 before Lincoln was sworn in. But the folks up in Westville were saying that they're hearing from and getting delegations from other states saying, number one, how did you pay cash? And number two, how does the Department of Corrections work with the Department of Administration so seamlessly? And that's occurred over a number of years, but anytime you can be rebuilding these welcome centers all over this Kankakee Welcome Center and in Angola, and to be places of pride and not necessarily, I wouldn't pull over there, or the state police posts and labs. They're all paid with cash. They're not debt financed. This is a whole different world we're living in as compared to 20 years ago. What I'm most eager to see is where we are 20 years from now. And we have built a foundation of which, or a launching pad for any company that wants to grow today for their tomorrow.
2 questions as we wrap up, looking to the future. And where do you see Indiana in 10 to maybe 20 years? Because a lot of the seeds planted during your administration certainly have been planted that maybe won't come to fruition for a while. What do you see in the future?
I see Indiana playing a central role in the core of the country in determining what the future will look like, both from a national security perspective and an economic security perspective, meaning we're going to be a place that doesn't just make things, manufacture things, develop things, but we do the research and the creation side of the ledger as well. And then ultimately we determine what the future will look like. And that is a really high ground when you can be a place known for applied knowledge. This is our sweet spot. And to have the universities and the colleges scattered all throughout our state that are increasingly becoming a central part of the community, not just the campus, that's what separates us from the pack.
How about for Eric Holcomb? What's next?
To be determined. My wife is, I'm going to shower her with attention till she tells me I'm being a pest, and that'll probably take 2 months.
Yeah. Have you given much thought? Do you have some ideas?
I have some ideas. I have some options. I've not told anyone yes. I've told some folks no. I don't want to act like I'm playing hard to get, but I really do, after 8 years, want to, my wife said, deprogram right before her very eyes. And I want to give some time to breathe, not act too quickly, but I'll be interested in helping an organization, generally speaking, grow. and grow in a way that's innovative. And so there's a number of options out there, and I'll take my time. Won't need to make a rushed decision.
Governor Eric Holcomb, really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us for this conversation, and do want to thank you, too, for your service to Indiana.
Thank you so much, Gerry.
Before we go, back to those baseball cards, presidential signatures, and his collection from dozens of trips around the globe. Governor Holcomb took us on a rare, behind-the-scenes tour to check it all out.
Like late 60s, 70s, binders that would have been individually collected, and then I get into the box sets that are unopened.
Okay, that's a lot. Any idea how many cards you've got?
I'm not telling publicly because I don't want my wife to know how many I've collected, but there are, a typical year would have right here 792 cards.
Okay.
Times 1968 forward.
Forward.
So
that's a big number.
You can do the math. But if you start to look in drawers and open cabinets, you'll find more cards.
Yeah.
That's a mantle. That's not the rookie mantle. That's the probably 53 mantle. That's the Negro League set. All right, let me show you the international room and then the signatures. So this is just stuff that has made its way back from individual trips.
Yeah.
And someday I'll be able to, this represents the 6 continents that we've sold Indiana on, like man-made, iconic structures. Yeah. Of course, I use the IMS for North America, of course.
Yes.
But it's, these represent relationships, and it's a small world out there, and it comes down to people and trust.
Yeah.
And earning that trust and continuing to work together. So the trips that I made in 2017 or 2018 are even stronger, the relationships in 2024. All right, can I show you the signatures, right? This is where just about no one ever goes, only because it's where we live.
Yeah.
And so it's not kind of part of the business model. I've got at least a signature for every president. That's a George Washington piece of correspondence with a guy who was it was actually a quartermaster, and he is writing Washington from Fort Pitt, and he's basically accusing the commanding officer of embezzlement and needs to be relieved. Down this hallway, in chronological order, goes from Washington Adams to the next Adams, all the way down and then back, and ends up where we are. And even if it looks like that's Gerald Ford talking about how he's basically confirming the commission that Oswald was the single lone gunman, or I'm a big Houston Astros fan, and I was a big Bush fan, the elder, and the younger, his son, but I'm an Astros fan, so that's the only reason I got that. I collect 10 soldiers, and Reagan in his home out in California collects lead 10 type soldiers. This is Reagan at a Jim Beam convention, and so you see the decanter that this artist used as like the podium. So they're just little. This is George. This is this Bush, the elder, and he's talking about, a little birdie told me that you collected signed baseballs and that you might like to have one signed by me. Oh, wow. And he also says, congratulations on your election as governor of the state of Indiana. So that's really, special and personalized. LBJ and different parts of his life. Kennedy, this is an interesting one just because this is 60, and Kennedy is talking about becoming president. He's a senator. People are questioning, can a Catholic be president of the U.S.? Yeah. This is actually a funny one, and I'm glad the photographer got this photo. I didn't see it coming. President then Trump says, how much did I win Indiana by? And I said 19. He goes, no, I think it was more than that. And I go, well, sir, I was on the ballot too, and pay attention to these things, and it was 19, and he says, no, I think it was more than that. And I said, well, I can get it to your people the numbers and the outcome. But by the way, 19's a lot, and Barack Obama won the state of Indiana. Just to put this in context, and 19's big, and so he pauses, and the reason he's laughing, and I'm kind of like, is he says, I tell him that's big, it's a big number, and he goes, would I have won it more if Bobby Knight was my vice president?
Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb wrapping up his 2 terms in office. His official portrait here capturing his personality to a T, including those trademark cowboy boots. I'm Gerry Dick. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of the Business and Beyond vodcast.